Here we go. Okay. Welcome everyone to Learn to Crochet. My name is Jenny. I am going to be leading the show with you guys today. We are going to replay one of our most popular classes, Learn to Crochet with Marley Bird. Before we get started though, I did want to just go over this quick introductory offer from our friends at AllFreeCrochet. We have a 75% off the subscription cost for a 1-year subscription. This is a digital magazine from our friends at AllFreeCrochet. Normally it's $49, but for you guys today, if you are not already a subscriber to AllFreeCrochet, you can get it for just $11.88. It gets you access for not only the year, it publishes 6 times a year, but you also get access to all of the back issues as well. So tons of ad-free patterns. They're all tech edited. So I know how frustrating it can be to get started with a pattern and then have, a mistake halfway through because the pattern was poorly written. So these are all tech edited patterns. It's all ad-free. It's a digital magazine, so there's no hard copy magazine mailed to you, but this is a great deal, 75% off. So just $11.88, you can get a 1-year subscription. You can also gift it to someone. So the URL to claim that deal, I will post it in the chat, but it is ilikecrochet.com/webinar22. Okay, let me close out of this and get the video going for you guys. Hopefully there will be no tech issues with the sound, but if so, I will do my best to,
as Dana said, my name is Marley.
Do my best to help troubleshoot. So we're going to get started here with Marley. And if you have any questions, I see a few questions in the chat. I am moderating today by myself, so I will do my best to keep up with the questions. If you have questions, please use the Q&A or the chat feature. So okie doke, enjoy.
Marley Bird. I am a knitwear and crochet designer and YouTube instructor. I'm also the ambassador for Yarnspirations Yarn, home of Chic Sheep by Marley Bird, which is my very own yarn line. I have written several different books on knitting and crochet, and I like to call myself bi crafty. All that really means is I like knitting and I like to crochet. I can do both crafts, and I love to teach people how to do both crafts. So whenever Fave Crafts asks me to come on and teach you how to knit or how to crochet, I get very excited. Now, as Dana said, this is going to essentially be a crash course on how to crochet. We're going to go through essentially like everything you need, plus a little bit more in the next hour. And we're going to go at a pretty quick pace. Just remember that this is getting recorded, so you will receive that recording. You'll be able to go back and rewatch it. And should you have any other issues, I do have my YouTube channel you can go check out, where I do have a lot of free lessons and classes over there as well. So if you like the way I teach, I have other places you can look for that stuff too. All right, so I'm guessing today you should have some yarn and some hooks, or a hook in front of you. I'm going to be using a larger hook today, so that way you can better see my stitches on this big bright green hook. And I'm going to use a bigger, fatter yarn for some of the process of this. I am going to assume that you guys understand different weights of yarn and such. So I'm not going to go into information about yarn. I do want to talk just a little bit about hooks before we jump in, and then we are going to literally just start crocheting. But I do have one rule, and this is the rule that I give knitters and crocheters, and that's that I need you to promise me, so pinky promise, everybody put your pinky up. You have to promise me that you are going to be patient with yourself. All too often, as adults, we are very patient with children or even with other adults that are learning something that we might be teaching them, but we forget to give ourselves some grace and be patient with ourselves. This is something that, yes, I'm going to make it look very easy, but I've been crocheting for 25 years. So of course it's easy for me. I've created that muscle memory that I can crochet really easily. But it will feel really weird at the start for you. It's going to feel fumbly. It's going to be like, what is this? And the thing is, your brain and your eyes are telling your hands to do something, but the neural pathways aren't built for that yet. So through practice, you will build that pathway and it will eventually become easier. So you're not crazy. You're not like inept. You are not somebody who's like, I can never crochet. If this is something that doesn't come easily to you, you might have to work at it a little bit, and that's totally okay. Be patient with yourself. I give you permission to throw your crochet across the room should you get frustrated. I did the exact same thing. It's just the matter of going across that room, picking it up and giving it a try again. All right. So it's okay to get frustrated. totally fine. Just remember that it's just sticks and string at the end of the day. And you can absolutely do this with some perseverance and some patience. All right, guys. So we all pinky promise, that's a lot of P's. We all pinky promise that we're going to be patient with ourselves. All right. Okay. So let's go ahead, Dina, come down to my hands. I'm going to grab a couple of different hooks out here so we can talk just briefly about hooks. Okay, guys. And everybody can still hear me, right? I just want to make sure. If you guys want to give me a thumbs up, you can hear me, and that would be awesome. Okay. I have the chat up, Dana, and I'm just not going to be able to see it just so you or see it just so that you know. Okay, guys. So I have a couple different hooks here. Obviously, you guys are probably very familiar with a hook like this, just a plain Jane hook, just like so. This is made of aluminum. This is actually an older Susan Bates hook, and all that means it's the way the shape of the hook itself is. It has a more incline area for you to actually like hook around the yarn than say something like a Clover or a Susan Bates. Not a Susan Bates, a boy, where it's much more rounded and less hook-like. And then you have some, they're even worse. I don't have them over here right now. Let me see here. Like this one's actually not so bad. See how inclined that one is right there? Not one is not better than another. And I will tell you that a lot of people will tell you you're either a boy fan or a Bates fan. And it really is just a matter of what you learn to crochet on, because I was originally a boy fan, and when I became the spokesperson for Red Heart Yarns, they own Susan Bates, so I had to teach myself how to use a Susan Bates. And the thing was, it wasn't impossible. I just had to change how I crocheted just a little bit because I had to get used to this hook really catching my yarn. So it's not the end of the world. You can use a Bates or a boy. It doesn't matter. You pick up whatever works for you. I mean, shoot, you can even get a dollar hook at the Dollar Tree and it's going to do the job. Okay. So obviously you can see these are a little bit different, not only because of the hooks themselves, but there's obviously a handle on this one and nothing on this one. Long story short, as crocheting has become more and more popular, you're going to see that there's a lot more ergonomic type hooks out there. And the whole idea there is that because these hooks generally will get smaller depending on the diameter of the actual hook, the thought process is to like this hook here down here is smaller than this one because the hook itself is smaller. And so like if you get even smaller, let me grab another one over here if I can. I'm trying really hard to reach y'all. Obviously, like this one here is even smaller. So as you don't have a handle on these, as you're gripping this one, like your hand is really cramped up, right? So through the years, there have been different handles that have been developed, or even on an entire new hook itself. Like this is the Furls crochet hook. You can try these all out and see what works best for you. Maybe you don't mind these ones down here and they're good for you. Maybe you want some of the more larger handles or ergonomic type handles, and they don't have to be these really big ones here. Addie has a plastic ones like this and these ones right here. You can try out different hand or hooks and see what works for you. I have an entire blog post on the ultimate guide to crochet hooks. If you ever want to check it out, it's on my blog. So you can really get a little bit more in depth here. But as you're trying different hooks, you're going to want to hold the hook as you do like you crochet, which leads us to our very first part of the lesson. When you crochet, you can either crochet with your hand holding the hook like a knife, so like you're cutting like a knife, or you can hold it like a pencil, okay? Either one. I hold it like a pencil because that's how I was taught, and it's very comfortable for me. I can crochet with it in my hand with like a knife. I can do it. I'm just not very proficient with it. So as I hold all these different hooks, as I hold the Addie swing here, like if I hold it like a knife, it's very comfortable. I can do that. But when I hold it like a pencil, it's too weighted down here for me. You see what I mean? When I hold the furls hook, when I hold it like a pencil, it feels good if I can keep my hand down here, but then I feel like I'm really far away from my action. So I tend to grip it here. And then as I'm crocheting, my hand starts to slip and it falls down. So these hooks don't work really well for me as a pencil grip. However, as a knife grip, they fit really well in my hands and they feel really good. You see that? Okay. Actually, my favorite hooks are these ones here. It's a Susan Bates hook with a handle that is made by somebody on Etsy. They're called Touche Crochet. And it's something about the really big bulbous handle itself fits in my really large hand. And it just feels really good. So these are my favorite hooks. So my point here is this, guys, there are a lot of different hooks out there for you to choose from, just like there's a lot of different knitting needles out there, and playing around with different ones is going to be a good place for you to start your crochet career. Like, don't think to yourself, oh, I'm crocheting with this hook and I'm not able to crochet very well. I'm not really enjoying it. Well, maybe it's the hook. Maybe it's the yarn. Maybe it's the combination of the two. So don't be afraid to try different ones out. Okay. And it's not that one's better than another. They're just all different. Okay. So I'm going to be using this one today. Pardon the noise.
Carly, I have a question.
Yes.
We are wondering, are there going to be left-handed techniques shown today?
So I will show how to hold in the left hand the best I can, but quite honestly, anything I show in the right hand. So like as we do a chain, we're going to go from left to right. And when you hold it in your left hand, you go from right to left. So it's literally the opposite of everything I do. I will do my best to show both. And remind me if I forget, but I will do my best to show both. Okay.
Thank you.
All right, no problem. When you're holding your hook, as I said, you could hold it like a knife or you can hold it like a pencil. When you're looking at your hook, you have this grip part right here, which is where, like, your thumb grip. And so you can like actually keep your thumb there, or if you're holding it like a pencil, you can keep it right up here. And like I keep my finger down there. You just work what works best with you. But here's the important aspect. You have your hook part right here, right? And this is the throat of your hook. And this is the shaft of your hook. You see how the throat of the hook is tapered and the shaft is a solid circular dimension. The thing here is that this shaft right here, that is what's going to determine the size of your stitch. So just like when you're knitting, I have some knitting right here. Just like when you're knitting, you see how there's a tapered portion on the knitting needle and then there's this solid portion right here. When you knit, you want your stitches to be the size of this portion of your needle. When you crochet, you also need your stitches to be the same size as this part of your hook. You don't want to keep the stitches down here in this portion down here in the throat area because they'll be too small. They'll never be the correct size. Same thing that you do when you're starting to knit. So as we crochet, our goal as we pull up loops, we're going to make sure that those loops get to this portion of our hook. So that way they're going to be the correct size. All right. Because the diameter of the hook is what determines the size of your stitch. Now, because somebody might be wondering, this is a 6.5 millimeter hook I'm using today. You can use any hook you want, but this hook is going to be nice and big for me to use with this bigger yarn. All right. Now, this is how we're going to get started. You start crochet with a slip knot. So if you've never done a slip knot before, here's what you're going to do. You're going to take the tail of your yarn. So find where the tail of your yarn is. And you put this into your left hand. And you could do this if you're left-handed or right-handed. It's the same thing. Put it in your left hand. Take your working yarn, wrap it around your forefinger and your middle finger, and come back up. Cross that loop over. So now we have this cross. You see that? Rotate your hand over, and I've secured my yarn itself, like I've pinched it right here with my pinky and my ring finger. So that way I have one loop, and this is the loop that crossed over and it came back. What I essentially want to do is I want to go underneath this front loop, grab the back loop, and pull it off of my fingers, all the while still holding my tail and holding my working yarn. See that? So it creates some tension and you get a slip knot. When you get that slip knot, you can separate the tail and the working yarn and see how it makes the knot tighter, or it goes completely away. All right, so I'm gonna do that one more time. Take the tail of the yarn, put it in the palm of your hand. Take your working yarn, wrap it around your forefinger and your middle finger. And when you come back up, cross over. Rotate your hand over. Make sure you lock that down. So I've secured my ends here, so that way there's like some tension. Go underneath the front loop, grab the back loop, and pull it off your fingers. All right, this is something you can practice a lot. If you didn't get that, I'm going to encourage you to rewind the video and watch it again. Okay, so you can do this whether you're right-handed or left-handed. So I'm grabbing this hook here, and this one here, this is by Lether and Company, if anybody's curious. I'm going to put this slip knot onto my crochet hook, and I'm going to separate the legs, so essentially the working yarn and the tail, so that way it's nice and secure. And where is it? It's on the shaft of the crochet hook, and it's the same size. Everybody with me on that? Okay. Now, here's what we're going to do. When you're crocheting, I like to tuck my tail out of the way, and we're going to work with the yarn that's attached to our ball of yarn. And the way you hold your yarn is going to be completely up to you. Everybody has a different way to hold yarn. I'm going to show you a couple different ways for you to try. One might work for you. None of them might work for you. You might find another way that works. The point here is that our goal is to create some tension on this yarn. So as we're creating stitches, we are getting consistent stitches. So what we want to do is find some way to hold this yarn to create substantial consistent tension. For me, I take my pinky finger, I wrap it around my yarn just like that. I wrap it around. So I go from this side and I wrap just like so. And then I take my 3 fingers here and I tuck them underneath. So essentially what I've created, my pinky becomes like a tension thing. So like as I move my pinky, see how it gives me more slack in my yarn. And then I use my pointer finger as a guide. Now that's my preferred way. All right, just like this. If you're left-handed, it'd be like this. You wrap around your pinky a couple times, go underneath. This is how, when I'm left-handed, I go like this. I go, instead of all 3 underneath, I go like this. Did you see how that just naturally happens? That's what I'm telling you guys. When you find a way to hold your yarn, you're gonna just one day just pick up your yarn and your hook and hold it. You're not even gonna realize that you're holding it differently until like it points out to yourself. Like, so left-handed, I tend to hold it like this, but it's the same sort of premise. I keep it wrapped around my pinky and then I hold it like so. All right. The other way you can hold it if you want to is essentially just like what I was just doing, just kind of wrapping your yarn like it's under, over, under, over. And then by pinching your pinky and your ring finger together, that's what's going to hold that tension with the yarn there. Because if you just go over, under, and don't like just kind of let them all be loose, nothing really happens. But if you pinch your yarn, you know, kind of pinch it, you can work with it. And then you'll see that I will kind of release my fingers and give myself extra slack. I have other friends who hold it like this. They hold it just around their pointer finger and they crochet just like that. All right. So main takeaway here, you can hold the yarn however the heck you want, as long as you find some way to keep consistent tension. You have to find some way that works for you. Okay. So I'm going to hold it the way I do. And here's the next step. As we're creating what are called chains, the chains are the foundation part of our project. They are actually called foundation chains. If you are a knitter, they would be called a cast on stitch, right? Our cast on stitches. It's what we're going to build our stitches into to create our fabric. So as we create chains, I like to grasp my slip knot with my thumb and my middle finger to, again, for some stability here. And then I'm going to create a chain. I'm going to show you right-handed to start, and then I'll show you left-handed. I'm going to have my hook. I start with my hook with the hook portion pointing towards my left. And I'm going to take my hook. I'm going to swivel it around my yarn here. See, I'm going from left underneath up towards the right. You see how that wrapped that yarn around my hook? This is why it's important to keep this tension, because now this is nice and taut around this hook. Now my goal is to pull this yarn through this stitch. Now, if I try and take my hook and pull it just like this, you see how my hook itself is getting caught on the stitch that was on my needle, the loop that was on my needle. You see that? Okay. That is a pain in the rear, right? So here's a little tip. I'm gonna kind of hold it like this and see if you guys can see. As you're pulling this hook through, if you twist it so that the hook, so if I'm like this, if I twist it so the hook points down, so it's pointing down, can you see how the chain itself is like a teardrop? So as I point the hook down, it comes through that chain very easily. You guys see that? I'm going to show you again. Slip knot is on my hook. I'm holding my slip knot right here, like down here. I'm actually holding the knot because it keeps some tension here and I can control this. I take my hook, I go around my yarn from left to right, and then I want to pull this through this. It's as simple as pulling that through this. And as I come close to this chain, I twist my hook so it comes through nice and easy. All right, I'm going to show left-handed, because the left-handed, you're going to go the opposite direction. So left-handed, you're like this, right? So your hook is going to point over here towards the right. You're going to go around right to left to create that tension. And you got to be patient with me, left-handers, because I am not I'm primarily a left-handed crocheter. So this is a little bit tricky for me. So I'm going to look a little bit more like you than the right-handed. I'm holding the knot. I take this, I'm pulling this loop through, I'm turning my hook, and as I pull it through and up. Now I want to do the next one. So with down here, I regrasp my fingers so that way they're grabbing the stitch. I go from right to left, come up, and as I come down, I twist my hook. Do you guys notice I'm holding it like a knife when I do left-handed? See, it's just funny, the different things that happen. And I think that's because this to me is very similar to knitting.
One says, thank you, I am left-handed and I get it.
Okay, good. So I'm going to go back to right-handed then real quick, because this is what you want to do. We want to practice. We want to get these chains. So here I am. Let me put this on here, right? Okay. So as you're chaining, as you create more and more chains, move the pad of your finger and your thumb up along these chains. You're going to see the chains are creating these nice V stitches. See how they look like a V on the top, and on the bottom, it looks like there's like a butt of a stitch. I call it like a pearl. You want to move the pad of your finger and your thumb up along those V's to give them some consistent tension to make sure they're not twisting around on you. It's for the same reason that we grabbed our slip knot. So that way, when you go around your yarn and you pull it through, it's nice and consistent. Go to the next, around your yarn, pull it through, around your yarn, pull it through, around the yarn, pull it through, so on and so forth. All right. I'm going to have you get a few on there, and I want you to take your hook out, and I want you to rip it out and do it again. Dun, dun, dun. Everybody panics. Everybody's like, what? You mean what? Or how many of you are like, I'm not going to do it. She'll never know. She'll never know. She's not going to know if I did it or not. It's totally up to you guys. I just want to make sure you get some practice here. Okay. So
Marley,
let's do this. Go ahead.
Jennifer's asking, is it okay if it twists, or does that mean I should start over?
So technically it is okay if it twists. However, as a beginner, it will be easier on you if you will try and prevent it from twisting by using the different tips that I've been showing you. So I'm going to show you what I mean. Okay, so let's make our slip knot. Remember the tail of the yarn in the palm of your hand. Wrap the working yarn around your forefinger and middle finger, cross over, go underneath the front loop, grab that back loop, pull it off. We have a slip knot. Okay, here we go. I grasp the knot, and this is where I'm going to be grasping my work the whole time I'm doing my chains to prevent them from twisting. I'm going to go around and pull through. As I do that, can everybody see that V right there? Can you see it? I hope you can. I'm going to put the pad of my thumb right onto that V just to hold it in place so it doesn't twist. Then I create the next chain. You see that V right there? I'm going to move the pad of my thumb up. Do the next chain. See that V? I'm going to move my thumb up. Do the next chain. See that V? I'm going to move my thumb up. And as I'm creating these chains, you guys, notice I am not creating the chain and then pulling things really tight. Don't pull your yarn really nice and tight to try and tighten up that stitch, because you will never be able to get your hook back into that chain. That chain has to be nice, and I'm going to say the word loose, but not so loose that it's like loses all formation, okay? It needs to be a nice consistent size. As you're working those chains, don't go like this and then be like, oh, I'm going to tighten it up, because look how small that gets right there. You're never going to be able to get into that. So you want to make sure that the chain, as it comes off of your hook, is that loop there is still the same size as it was when it was on your hook. Because see, this loop right here becomes that V. Watch, as I pull through and up, there it is. You see that? I pull through and up. The loop that was on my needle becomes that V. And I want to make sure it stays the size that it was on my needle. Okay. All right. So I want you to get 11 chains if you can. If you don't get 11, that's totally all right. But it's an easy number to get to is 11. I don't even know how many I have. So this is how you're going to count. This is why that person who asked about the twisted chain, does it work? Yeah, you can absolutely work with a twisted chain, but when it's not twisted and it's able to lay flat like this and you can see all the V's really easily, it makes it easier to count. So rule number 1, everybody, and everybody's going to repeat this and write this in the chat to confirm that you heard this. The loop on your hook never counts as a stitch. Linda's all over it. Linda's all over it. Never count the loop on your hook. Ever, 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 ever. Okay. So as we're counting our chains here, we will not count the loop that's on our hook. We will count the V's that are beneath it. Thank you. Everybody's writing that. See, you guys are doing great. All right, so we're going to see these V's. We're going to count them. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. I got over eager. So I'm going to go back up and get just to 11. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So when I rip back, I want that one that would be number 12. I want that one to be the loop that's on my hook. Why? Because the loop on my hook never counts as a stitch. So if I were to recount right now, I should have 11. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. I feel like Count Chocula. 11 chains. This is where we are. Okay, I got to get you started on this next row, and then we're going to have just a mild break so that we can stretch our hands and get a little bit of a rest here, okay? Because this is really stressful, I know. As we're going to create a single crochet, we want to put the single crochet into the second chain from our hook. So you never count the loop on your hook as a stitch. So this V right here would be the first chain from my hook. This V right here would be my second chain. Now, this is where everybody's going to ask, well, where do I put my hook? Where does it go? You can either put it through that back loop right there of the V. Like if you were holding your work like this, you could put it through that back loop. You could put it through, you could turn it over and put it through the butt of the stitch. You could come through just the front loop. What I like to do, you guys, and what I find really easy teaching beginners is you have this V right here. If you take your hook and pierce right the center of the V, If you pierced it, right? I pierced right down the center of the V. If I look at the top, it's as if I have that top loop and the butt of the stitch resting on my hook. That's what I like to do. All right. It leaves the bottom loop just kind of hanging down there, and I'm okay with that. So we're going to take our hook and just pierce it in there. If you don't get this, you guys, I don't care. Just get something. Even if you just get one strand, that's okay. Just do something. Once you get that in there, we're now going to essentially do another chain, sort of like, okay? So just like when we did a chain and you went from left to right and went around your yarn, you're doing the same thing. And now we're going to pull this yarn, instead of through the loop on our hook, we're going to pull it through this chain we went into. So we yarn over, see how I'm grasping my chain? I pull that loop through the chain and I come back up. Now I have 2 loops on my hook. If this were knitting, it'd be great. I'd be going on, I'd be putting more and more loops, but this is crochet. In crochet, we have to bind off our stitches as we go. So what you're going to do now is just like before, when you did your chain, you're going to go from left to right, go underneath, and we're going to pull this, instead of just through one of these, we're going to pull it through both of them. So as I come through, I want to turn my hook, remember? And I'm going to pull it through both of those loops and come up. That right there, everybody, is a single crochet. Congratulations, you just did your very first crochet stitch. Now, because we want to make sure our edges are straight, we're going to use one of these handy dandy locking stitch markers. If you don't have one of these, you have a paper clip or a safety pin or something to work in a pinch, that will be great. But what I want you to do is, looking at your hook, you have your loop on your hook, which does not count as a stitch. And you have the V, you see that V right there behind the loop on your hook? That's the top of the single crochet you just made. I want you to take your stitch marker and put your stitch marker directly into, underneath, I should say, the 2 legs of that V. And that now lets you know that when you come back along this row, that's going to be the last stitch of your row. Okay. Now we put our work back like this, like it's parallel. And our goal here now, everybody, is to put a single crochet into each one of these V's going all the way down. Now, I know some of you are probably going to skip a couple of the chains and you're going to come up a little bit short. And right here at the start, guys, I really don't care. I want you just to practice working into these chains. And Dana, if you want to go to my face really quick, because I want to be like really real. I'm going to be really real with you guys. You guys ready? Even advanced crocheters struggle with this part of crochet. This is the hardest part of crochet. Working into the chains is a pain in the rear. And it's just one of those things that, does it get a little bit easier over time? Absolutely. Does it remain annoying? Absolutely. So as you're getting frustrated with this part, again, be patient. You can absolutely do this. Just be patient with yourself. All right. Okay. Go back to my hands really quickly. I'm going to do one more single crochet and then we can do a quick break. So I want to show you how to do the single crochet once again. Sorry, I didn't mean to hit my mic. So as I'm looking at my chains here, I can see I worked into this one. So I'm going to look over towards the right and I can see that one there, right? So I'm going to go pierce right down that V. I'm going, I'm going around my yarn, pull that yarn through that stitch, through the chain. So I have 2 loops on my hook, yarn over again, and pull through those 2 loops. Now, if you're left-handed, and it's going to look funny now because I'm going to have right-handed and left-handed on here. If you're left-handed, see if I can get this to work for me. Be patient with me here, okay? If you're left-handed, we're going to go pierce the chain. Now I'm on the other side of the chain. So pierce the chain, yarn over, pull it through the chain, pull the loop up. Just like so, yarn over and pull through 2. I'm going to, even though this isn't right. So your chain looks like this. You're going to pierce it, yarn over, pull up, yarn over. See, even right here. So look what I did. I made the first loop too tight. Like I kept it down here on this portion because I'm not used to doing this. So I need to make sure I bring it up there, make sure that loop is the same size as my hook. Now I yarn over and I could pull through very nice and easily. Okay. All right, keep going down to the end of this row. Once you get there, I want you to stretch your hands out and stuff. Okay, so we're back down here. I took a pause so that I got down to my last 2 chains so I could help you out with working to the end. Something I do want you to notice, if you notice as I'm working through this, I try and hold my work as if it was, it's straight back and forth. And through the years, what I found is I always tend to, with my opposite, with the hand that I'm holding my hook with, I tend to grip my work itself with my pinky and my ring finger, like I'm holding it straight. It's like I'm helping to keep it straight. I don't know why. If that helps you, great, but it helps me. All right, so I'm coming up to my last 2 chains here. And you create your stitch in those chains just like you would anything else, okay? So I have my V right here. I'm gonna go right into that, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, draw through 2. And I have my last one. You might be like, what, that looks funny. What? It's right up by that knot. You can totally get in there. See, it looks like the back loop and the butt of the stitch. Yarn over, pull up, yarn over, draw through 2. Woo, congratulations, guys. Now, if you didn't get this on this first run, that's okay. You can always rip out, start over. It's not the end of the world, guys. Remember, it's just sticks and string. Now, when you're working with crochet, you have to create stitches to start off the next row that are the same height as the stitches you are working. So with single crochet, you would start off with the chain 1. For a half double, it would be chain 2, double, chain 3, so on and so forth. We're going to stick with our single crochets here. So what I want to do, before I turn, I'm going to just do a chain. So just like what we did before when we were creating our foundation chain, I simply just yarn over my hook and pull that loop through the loop on my hook. That's a chain, all right? Once I've created that chain, I can turn my work, all right? So it's like turning a page of a book. So we've just finished this page, we're gonna turn it. And now we're gonna read this page, all right? It's like turning a page of a book. So you're here, you turn it, and you're here. If you're left-handed, you're here, you're gonna turn it, and you're here, okay? So it's just turning a page of a book. Once you do that, once again, you have your project here. You're gonna be looking at the back side of your work, and we're going to get started. Now, as we're working down this, you might be like, well, I don't know where I'm gonna start putting these stitches. Well, that's what I'm here for, everybody. The first thing we're gonna do is find the top of the first stitch. So if you're looking here, you might be like, oh, that's my first stitch. It's right there. I'm not counting the one on my hook. Marley said not to do that. But look, I see a V right there. That must be my first stitch. You would actually be correct in that it's your first chain stitch, but it's not your first single crochet. Because remember, you did your single crochet and then we chained 1. So when I tell you, I want you to single crochet into the first single crochet, you're going to look at this and be like, oh, well, that was my chain 1 and that's my first single crochet. Or think about this, guys. How did we start off? We did a single crochet in the second chain from hook, right? Well, there's our first chain. You could say this is our second chain, okay? So see that V right there? That's the top of our stitch. That V is the top of this stitch. This right here, that's the post of our single crochet. Now, unlike the chains where we pierced right into the V, we aren't going to do that for this particular stitch. Could it be done? Absolutely. That's the beauty of crochet. There are rules and they are all made to be broken, and you could put your hook anywhere. Literally, I could come down here and work stitches down here if I wanted to. But for the rule of thumb, unless a pattern tells you otherwise, you are supposed to put your hook essentially underneath that V. Okay, so if you're looking at the side of your work, if you're holding your work flat like this, can you see that big hole right there? There's that big hole right by those posts of the stitches. If you stick your hook into that big hole and then you look at the top of your hook, you're going to see it looks like that V is resting on the top of your hook. If you see that, that's perfect, because what it is really, guys, and this is so that way you have terminology for the future. This here, that's your front loop. That there, that's your back loop. And there are times in the future that you might just work in the front loop or you just work in the back loop. This is where you would go underneath. It's called going underneath both loops. All right. Underneath both loops. Once you do that, everything is the same thing. You yarn over your hook. This is what it's called. It's called a yarn over your hook. Pull up a loop, pull up a loop. Make sure your hook is parallel. This loop and this loop are both the size of my hook, right? I don't have this one down here. I have it both the size of my hook. I yarn over and I pull through both loops. Now, just like down there, I want to make sure I'm marking that first stitch just to help me out. It helps me know where the last stitch of my row will be when I come back down there. So I look for the V behind the loop on my hook that I just made. That's the top. That's the V like we're going into, right? That's the top of the single crochet we just created. And we carry on. So now we go to the next V. You put your hook underneath the V. You can look up like this and be like, oh, there it is. Cool. Yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, draw through 2. Into the V, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, draw through 2. All right, it's going to be a little bit different for left-handed in that my work's going to look different than yours because I'm looking on the back side of what your would be. But essentially, oh, look at me. I even just started to hold it in my right hand. Give me a minute. Let me adjust my brain. Okay. There's your hole. You go into it, yarn over, pull up a loop. Make sure that loop is the same size as the loop on your hook, right? Yarn over, draw through 2. Find the next V, go in, the V's on top, yarn over, pull up a loop. Make sure you get down there to where they're the same size as your hook. Yarn over and pull through 2. You see that?
I have a question that came through during the intermission. Karen says, she must be a knitter, my cast on is tight no matter what I do. Suggestions. And I think that applies to tension in general.
That is a tension problem. So what's going on there is that as you are crocheting, so I'm game off, everybody. So if you're crocheting along here, just keep crocheting. But for the chain, watch. As you are creating this, as you pull this up and you pull this tight, you are tightening up that stitch beneath there. You see that? You see you're here and you pull up your chain, and then you're here and you pull up your chain. See how tight those get? Okay. You pull up your chain and you pull up your chain. Like it's just, you're making those so incredibly tight. So you don't want to pull. It's very important that as this loop that is on your hook, as it is the same size as your hook, when you yarn over and pull that loop through the loop on your hook, you want to do everything possible to make sure that loop that just came off your hook that has now become the chain does not adjust size, because it is now the same size as your hook. So that's where as you pinch it, you're not letting it get any tighter. So you yarn over and do the next one. Okay, now that's the same size as the one on my hook. I pinch it, I'm not letting it get any tighter. I yarn over, I pull through, it's the same size, I pinch. Can you see how these look like they are much more consistent with the size of the hook I'm on? They aren't like super tight. So really this pinching thing, it not only keeps control of your chains and prevents them from turning around on you and twisting around on you so much, it makes it so that way your chains remain consistent in the size of whatever hook you're using. Now, there are people who will tell you to go up a hook size or 2 if you just cannot keep those chain stitches the size they're supposed to be. But really, that's just a Band-Aid fix, because if you go up a couple hook sizes and you're still pulling on the yarn, it doesn't matter that you went up a couple hook sizes, because it's apparent you're not keeping the size of your stitch determined by the size of your hook. You're just willy-nilly pulling on the yarn. So your hook size determines the size of your stitch, and that's the way it should be. And so you just got to make sure that you're allowing it to remain that size without pulling it extra tight. Does that make sense? And hopefully it does for everybody. And the same thing goes, guys, as we're single crocheting. As you go into your stitch and you yarn over and you pull up your loop, these loops are the same size as my hook, okay? I don't want to pull this loop up really tall like this. There are crocheters out there that do this. and it's dreadful. You're never going to get gauge on a project, like it's never going to work out, because that loop there is no longer the size of my green hook, right? Like I could take that green hook out and I could get, geez, I could probably get one of these here, and look at this, that fits in there just perfectly. And look how much bigger that is. I mean, that's massive. But you see what I mean? If I just pull up a loop and let it be willy-nilly any size I want it to be, instead of making it the size of my hook, then you're not allowing your hook to do its job. So when you pull up your stitches, you need to make sure, pull up your loops, I should say. When you pull up your loops, you want to make sure they're the same size as your hook. And as the opposite of pulling it too tall, you want to make sure as you're creating this, that you don't go like you create it like this and then you pull it tight like that. See how that squished that up? Now you've just made it too short. Instead of too tall, now it's too short. So you want to resist the urge of pulling things tight to make it look more like really tight and uniform. Otherwise your crochet is going to look like Kevlar. It's going to be so stiff, it's going to stand up on its own. And none of your stitches are ever going to be the correct size. So when you pull up your loop, you want to make sure your work is parallel, yarn over and pull through. And when I say parallel, it's parallel for these single crochets. As we create more like higher stitches and stuff, like let's say if we were doing a double crochet, we would yarn over our hook to start. And then when we go in and pull up a loop, this, you see how my work is more diagonal now? That's because if I pull my hook up to be parallel at this point, what did I just do? I just made that loop super tall. I don't want that, right? I want that loop to be the same size as my hook. So I have to work this sort of like, it's like on a diagonal. But when I get to where I have two loops, that's where I'm parallel. So it's like when you get to the taller stitches, you're going to work where it's more like this, and you work until you get to parallel for the last two stitches of the row. Does that make sense? So I want to get to the end of this row so you guys can see how you would work into that stitch marker. Because this is one of the biggest mistakes that beginner crocheters tend to do, is they don't know how many stitches they have. When you get down to the end of the row, we know this is the last stitch of the row because we did mark it. So, and it's marked through our V. So we know we're just going to stick our hook right there because there's our V, right? Yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, draw through two, and we're at the end of the row. So when we're going to chain one and turn, we're going to single crochet to the top of our first single crochet. Well, we know we don't count the chain. So you look for the next V, there it is. I put my hook underneath it, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, draw through two. So this is the top of that stitch, right? So I go ahead and remove the stitch marker and move it up. And I keep going. Now, here's the deal, guys. You guys have learned so much so far, and you might be like, I just learned how to chain and single crochet. Well, you also learned how to use stitch markers. You learned how to keep track of your foundation chains. You learned how to make it so that they don't twist. You learned how to keep your edges nice and straight, and you're about to learn how to fasten off or finish off your work. When you get to the end of the row, you have a couple choices. First off, always, always, always cut your yarn, leaving 4 to 6 inches. Don't think, oh, this is such a waste of yarn. I don't need to have that long tail. No, always have a long tail. Always weave it in at the end. Do not crochet over your tail. I know there are some very famous YouTubers out there that are very good at crochet, and they will teach you to crochet over your tail. Do not do it. Do not do it. If we have time here at the end, I'm going to show you why you don't want to do that. But when you get to the end here, you can either just pull this up, just pull it up and it would be finished. But I like to do a chain one, like I chain one and finish it. It's like it knots it. Okay. So this is how you would finish your work. When you get to wherever you want to end, that's how you would finish it. So now you know how to do that. Now we're going to talk about how you're going to weave in those ends, because that's what you're going to do. You're going to weave them in, and it's not hard. You're going to get yourself a bent tip tapestry needle. I prefer the metal ones because they make life so much easier than the plastic ones. The plastic ones absolutely suck, in my opinion. Sorry, I don't know if I'm allowed to say that word, Dana, but I just did. So you take your needle. You see the bottom of these stitches here where you have like these legs? I'm going to take my needle and just thread it through the bottom of these stitches. pull this through, okay? But that's not enough. You can't just go down once. When you're doing crochet, you want to think of it like a snake. You want to do it like a snake. So what I do is I'm coming back, I kind of cup over this strand I have right here, and I work my way back along the same path. Okay. And then one more time I will go. And this time I'm not only just going underneath, but I'm trying to like actually like split my yarn. So that way my yarn, as it's coming through this, is actually grabbing through and working through the yarn itself. That is not going to come undone. That's going to be a nice, secure, beautiful woven in piece that when you go to wash it, it's not going to pop out. Okay, does that make sense? You would do the same thing up here. Let's look at this one because it's not right down there close to where it's an end. So up here, we're at the top, right? This is where we fastened off. And you're like, well, Marley, I'm at the top. I'm not by the legs. Well, you are. Just kind of pop down here and come down. Do it on the wrong side. Pop it in and you go through the same path. Okay, this is how you weave in. Now, there are going to be people who will tell you just crochet over this tail. And so they would just lay it flat here. And as they're going into their V's, right, they're going into their V's, they're just laying that yarn on top too and just crocheting over top of it, thinking that that's going to keep it secure. It is not. Don't do it. It's like a major pet peeve of mine. One last thing I want to show you is how you join with a slip stitch, because that's how I'm going to have you join new yarn should you be making something. So let's say, you know, you have your work like this and you have to add a new ball of yarn for whatever reason, not for what, you know, whatever. You're going to put your hook underneath where you need to join your yarn, grab your yarn, wrap it around your needle, your hook, pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through that loop, just like you did a chain. Now your yarn is attached and you're ready to carry on. So that's how you can add a new color or a new ball of yarn if you're working on something. Now, the cool thing is, guys, everything you just learned today makes you an actual crocheter. Does it make you an advanced crocheter? No. But this is really the building blocks to move on and do taller stitches than this, because that's the beauty of crochet is you can do different stitch heights. You can do a fan stitch. You could do granny groups. There's lots of other things to do. But this is really the greatest start for learning to crochet. And there are so many patterns on AllFreeCrochet and that you can absolutely check out that you have what you need as far as to get started with it. So my website, you guys, I'm marleybird.com. You can check out a lot of free patterns though at allfreecrochet.com. I think that Dana put up a link to a bunch of free beginner patterns, which are a really great place to start. And again, remember, we all pinky swore that we're going to be patient with ourselves. Okay. It's going to be frustrating. It's hard. You guys saw me crochet left-handed and you saw like, I'm not great at it, right? Like I probably looked a little bit more like you guys because it's still tricky. I have to consciously think to myself, okay, move this here, do this. Like it's a little bit slower, but over time it will become faster. You can do it. All right. I hope you guys like it.
Okay, everyone, that was a wonderful class by the one and only Marley Bird. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Like I said, we did record today's event and we will send a link tomorrow, 24 hours from right now, with a link to the video recording. So you will be able to rewatch as many times as you want. I do want to go back to my screen share real quick and just share a few details with you on our upcoming classes and some contact info for myself if you have any questions. So bear with me. I'm just going to get this started here and we'll do another quick slide or screen share. Okay, so we have some upcoming classes. This Granny Square one just happened last week. Today was the Learn to Crochet. And then next Tuesday, March 22nd, we will be back here with Marley Bird to do a Learn to Knit class. If any of you guys want to learn how to knit, Marley is a great teacher, as we just saw. Let's see here. Again, one more time, this deal for I Like Crochet. It is $11.88 for a 1-year subscription. ilikecrochet.com/webinar22 is the URL to claim that offer. And then again, my contact information is jbowden@primecp.com. My name is Jenny. And then here are links to Marley's social channels. She's got tons of great videos on her YouTube channel, as well as our website, favecrafts.com. That is our free crafting website with knitting, crochet, sewing, you know, all kinds of different craft tutorials and project inspiration for free on Fave Crafts. We also have AllFreeCrochet.com, which is another free website with just crochet patterns. And then again, I Like Crochet is our premium content digital magazine. So ilikecrochet.com/webinar22 to get the 75% off special offer for you guys today. And yes, the Granny Square class was last week. I can include a link to that class as well in the email with today's event. So, all right, well, thank you guys for joining us. It was a pleasure. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out. Otherwise, have a wonderful afternoon, and we hope to see you guys again soon. Bye-bye.